Hello everybody and good afternoon. Thank you for joining us on this webinar. Hopefully you can all hear me okay. If one of you could just pop a little comment into the chat box just to let me know that the audio is all working okay, that would be great. We're here today to talk about the process of printing on a print-only device. A little bit, just a quick introduction to the laminating part of that process, and then putting it in a GR cutter. So one of our cut-only devices, one of the larger ones that we do. In this video, we're going to be using the 640 model, so the 64-inch. Great, thank you for confirming there, Connie. And I am joined today by Dan Lathel, who is the
product support
specialist. There you go. That'll do. Who's a bit of a whiz on this process, so he's joining me today to talk through this. The chat box that hopefully you can all see on your screens, you can use to interact with us, to talk with us. You can ask questions throughout the webinar. If we see them pop up, we'll try and answer them as they come up. If not, there will be a bit of a question answer session at the end of this where you can ask extra questions. We'll hang on and have a bit of a discussion, and we can pop up all the questions on the screen so that you can see what we're all talking about. Otherwise, hopefully you guys can all hear and see everything okay. There is a little bit of a lag during live webinars, so if it is running a little bit behind, we'll just try and talk slowly through things, but it should sort of catch up and you should still be able to understand what's going on, hopefully. If there are any problems, again, just shove it in the chat box and we'll try and answer those. So without further ado, we'll crack on. We've got a little video that we're going to be talking through here, which goes through the process, and we'll pause at relevant points. Dan's going to take the lead on this, as I said, he's the lead when it comes to doing the print, laminate, and cut workflow. And yeah, if any of you guys have got questions, feel free to ask. So now to you.
Bring it on over.
Dan.
Yeah, no worries. So most people now, if they were going to buy one of their machines, they could go down the route of buying a print and cut model. But then if they want to go down the route of more having a different type of like production environment, you could buy a print only machine and then have that going 24/7, and then as the cuts come out with the crop marks, you can put them on the cutter. But from looking around and being in tech first, people didn't really understand how to go from one to the other. So this is probably why this webinar is pretty good for that.
So we're going to be looking, just a side note there, at the process of having a print-only device and a cut-only device in VersaWorks, but also using CutStudio, right?
Yeah, using CutStudio. So from the last webinar, we found that we needed having CutStudio as a way of doing cut-onlys as well. So I added that one on at the end as well. Pretty simple, same sort of way, except you just have to save the artwork. Okay, just the audio. Yep.
Yeah, just turned it up. Hopefully you guys can hear okay.
Okay, so let's start this one through. So what I'm doing now is I'm just showing that I've got the RF and the GR. Those are the two machines we're using at the moment. So as I go into our artwork afterwards, all I'm doing here is just setting up the width and the height of the artwork itself. So you would have this specific to whatever design you want. So here what I'm doing is I'm adding the crop marks within VersaWorks. This is standard within our RIP. All it is just registration marks. No visual.
Hold on a minute. You should be seeing what we're seeing. So they should be seeing the VersaWorks visual.
Or is it just a bit of lag?
As I said, there could be that it's a bit of a lag there. Well, somebody could, but have you all got no visual? Just seen that Justin's popped that up there. Got it. There we go. Yeah. Sorry. As I said, there is sometimes a little bit of a lag. It can depend on your internet connection as well as ours. So we're hardwired into our internet, so it should be pretty good. But as I said, it can have a bit of a lag. So hopefully that'll catch up.
Yeah, in the video, I did try and sort of circle what I'm sort of doing, and you can gather what it is because we recorded it at quite a good resolution anyway, so you'll be able to see all the font and the text. Okay, so from what we did there is we added a job in, and then from there, all I did was go in, change the size of the artwork, and then I'm going into adding crop marks. So just continuing on from there.
Oh, just a side note there, Dan. When you added the crop marks, I noticed that there's no crop marks in the visual in VersaWorks. That's because the machine adds the crop marks, not VersaWorks. So the visual won't change, but they will still be printed.
Yeah, exactly that, yeah. Okay, so let's see what I did next. Okay, so this is just me adding in some position. I can always center this on the media if this was like my only job that I was doing, but I was just giving it a bit of space from the edge of the media itself where our media clamps go down. Okay, so at that point there, the job is pretty much ready to go. You can see on there it shows cut lines as well, but obviously being a print only machine, it won't use that. It's just going to print the job, and I've set everything up as I want to there. So let's see what we go on to next. So at that point, I rip the job and then print it out. So hopefully, if we put it in the right order, Joe, the next bit should be printing. There we are.
So on the RF at the front there, you can see we've just sort of broken this little print down a little bit, but it's putting the crop marks on the front line there. You can see the 2 dots and that little black line as well, which is used when you put the print back into a device to register how straight it is within the device.
Yeah, because it should be the same thickness as the cutting strip on your machine. So on the GR, that is the thickness. So there we go, coming on out now. I'm just giving it a bit of feed afterwards, just so that, because there's the paper sensor at the back of the GR as well, so it's just so that that doesn't over trip it and say that there's no media. So I just put out a little bit more than I need to, and at this point just trim it off, just do a sheet cut. So nice and easy. There we go.
You can see this is why I got Dan to do this bit, where he's got a much bigger
bigger arms.
Arm span than me, yeah.
So this is where we go through into the laminating process. So we've got a backing sheet on this one at the minute, Joe. If we aligned it to the right size, so say we're going to do like a job that is 64 inches long or like as wide as that media, we wouldn't have to use a backing sheet. We can just put it straight through. Yeah,
when laminating, if you're laminating roll to roll, then you can laminate much larger quantities at once. If you're just laminating a small piece of print like we are here, you can see that on the bed of the laminator, we've just put some backing sheet from some vinyl, so the laminate won't be sticking to the laminate rolls, and we're just going to put through one piece, and you're wiping it there, Dan, as well.
Yeah, so I'm using a tack rag here. This is has a real weird feel to it, but all of it's doing is just picking up any sort of bits of dust. It's almost like using a microfiber cloth, but just with a coating on it. So this is it, just going through nice and easy, really slow. And that's giving it the lamb towards the end. So at that point, I would have just sheet cut it off at the back, just trimmed it off, and then now I'm adding it into the GR itself. So at the moment, I've got those registration marks you can see there, and I'm lining it up on the cutting strip left and right, and it's just those 2 dots, line it up as it is. And then all I'm doing there is I'm going to press enter or pinch. You can do it on enter or pinch, and it's just set up. And now the clamps will go down. On the GR as well, you can also set up if you just want the outside ones to pinch or if you want the middle ones to pinch. So that's it there, just reading the width. So what I want to do now is I want to set it up so that, let's see, I found in the time, there's almost like a little tip. If you align the margin, before I just jump ahead, that one there, if I can stop it there. That, perfect place to put the play button there. But you've got to make sure on the GRs anyway that it has the sensor mode, because you have automatic, you've got sensor, and then you've also got a manual mode. So if you're troubleshooting, you can put a little pen tool in and manually select each corner of the registration marks. But on the GR, just make sure it's on a sensor mode. That's then when you send your job through VersaWorks, it will come out and find it automatically. So let's just carry on with that one. So there we go, this is what I did next. So next thing I did is I moved it over so that the knife itself, the contour cut blade, that is over the registration mark, just so that it knows where to start with straight away. Because if you do it from the far left-hand side and you've got that bit of media on the edge, that can then, it will try and scan it further in and it won't find it. So that space I've got, what I did next is I actually moved it over to do a test cut.
Yeah, so when cutting through a job that's been laminated, obviously it's got double thickness of material, so you might need to up the pressures. So this is why Dan is just doing a little test cut here to check that the blade will cut through okay.
Yeah, so I think I had to increment the force just that little bit, just because it's going through a laminate, because before this was set up just for cutting through normal vinyl. So you can see it just needs a little bit more. Maybe I have to force just that a little bit. So what we're doing now is I'm going back into VersaWorks. So one bit that you can notice on here is I'll just stop it here. Oh, is that normal, Joe? Just give it a second, yeah. Okay. So what this bit here is, if you look on the left-hand side, you can see where I've got all my machines are listed along the top. If you were, for using a GR, you have to drag and drop the job from one queue to the other queue for it to then be moved over, and it has to be a ripped job. But the default layout for VersaWorks does it in the tabs at the top, not one on top of the other, one on top of each other. So what I'm doing here is I'm just changing the layout of VersaWorks so it's easy to drag and drop over. So you see now it then moves it over, so you've got a queue for each one.
So that you could just pause it there a minute.
Yeah, no worries.
That setting in the job set in the options in the preferences for VersaWorks is show jobs for all printers rather than show job for selected printer only, as Jan selected there, which means that it splits the previews for you.
Joe. Just see if we can catch this up a little bit here. There we go. So I'm just making everything look a little bit more tidy, so you can see there, and there's even the little blue font at the bottom that says it can only be dragged and dropped over. So that now is added into the GR queue. So in here, it's already picked up all my cut lines, which is already there. So you saw it in the last video where I added it. And then in here, you can change the cut pressures and forces if you want to, or you can do it, which is on the machine itself. You can change the cut force, perforation, and anything like that. I've set mine up on the machine itself, so there's no need for me to change it in VersaWorks. So at that point there, it's just print and rip. So then this is it coming on over. So you'll see it'll start to look for the crop marks. So that's the optical eye coming out there. You might be able to see just a little red dot. That's just picking up. It'll go left to the right, and then it will go the two at the front, and then it will go to the top. Sometimes you may get it so that it says crop mark error, or like a skew that is normally down to it not being put in straight. So like I said about that little tab that you've got, that has to be directly in line with the cutting strip. So there we go. So that's found all those marks, and then it's got the data from VersaWorks, and it's now cutting it out. One thing to note as well, if you wanted to do a perf cut or a perforation cut at the same time as doing this, the rip will process all of the cut lines first, and then towards the end, it'll ask you on the GR itself to move the pen to the front, because on the GR, our perforation cut is separate from the contour cut to save the cutting strip from being damaged, so it goes over like a little gap. So it will ask you to move the pen from the back towards the front, and then you can carry on and it will do the perforation cut. But in this video, we only did contour cut. Look, good stickers there.
Cool. Any of you have any questions so far?
Yeah, fire them away.
We probably could have sped up this section of the video. We're just watching it cut for a minute. But if any of you guys have got any questions, feel free to ask them. There we go. We're all finished now.
That's a good time waster. Cheers.
Yeah.
Okay, so that on there is all done. So then all I'm going to do, let's have a look.
Little question popped up there. So, sorry, question spot just popped in there. What can you produce using this technique? With print, laminate, and cut, you can do this. You can do this on a print and cut device. The benefit of doing it by splitting the processes is that your printer can carry on printing whilst you're cutting. Now, for most people, it tends to be that having your devices combined, so having a print and cut device tends to work better. It saves on manual labor. It means you can leave your machine to do the work. But for people who tend to do a lot of printing, it does tend to, or people want to just keep printing whilst it's cutting, they can split it. Also, with the GR cutter, it can cut faster and stronger than a normal print and cut device. 500
GSMs worth of force, whereas on the other ones you're looking at about 350 max, I believe it is.
Yeah, so if people are cutting particularly hard to cut materials,
you're looking at motorcycle graphics mainly. So if you're going to do like go-karting graphics, like you could do your prints, you could do your laminates, and then straight on put it on the GR. You can put it down with a different force. You can put a sandblast blade in there and go through thicker substances as well.
Yeah, there we go. And another question there. You've got the older VS 540i or SP 540i, didn't say there. Can you print with that machine, then laminate, then bring it back to the machine to cut? Yes, Paul, of course you can. So it's similar to this process. In this process, we're showing using a separate cutter. But in order to do print, laminate, and cut, it's a similar process. In VersaWorks, you add your crop marks. In the marks tab, you set in the job print only, and then you put it back into the machine, align as we were just here, and then send the job cut only, and it will look for the registration marks because you still have that box selected in VersaWorks. We did actually do a webinar on this a few weeks ago, which we're waiting to put up online, so it will be accessible to all of you. So Paul, if you keep an eye out on our website, as soon as we have that section available, you'll be able to watch the old webinar where we did print, laminate, and cut on a print and cut device.
Yeah, cool. Let's continue on. Oh, what's that one? Here we go. Let's see if this one is going to catch on a bit. Might have to go back a little bit on
there. Yeah, you definitely don't want to be using your scissors. Yeah, in order to do it, it's just the same registration process, except you're doing it on the same device rather than doing it on separate devices.
The marks look exactly the same. So yeah, here we go. Now all I'm doing is just proving that I actually did cut it, and it wasn't loads of different videos together. So there you go. That was premium quality. So so that was the way of doing it through VersaWorks. So that would be done through VersaWorks Dual, so that you've got the GR on there. But if you've got the older GX cutters, it's the same process, just on VersaWorks. So if you've got an older machine and an older cutter, you can still use it. The only thing you can't cross between is using a new cutter with an older machine, something like that. But you can always get hold of an older machine like a GX. So the next bit we'll go into is from one of the questions that we had in the last webinar, where it was how you do it through CutStudio. So CutStudio is the free piece of software that comes with your machine. And what it does is it has the option within it to add crop marks. So what you do is you do it within Illustrator or your design package. So if you're using Corel or Adobe Illustrator, there is a plugin for CutStudio that does it within the design. So let's have a look here and grab this one on. I'll have to rewind that one a bit. Here we go. So you can see now I'm within Illustrator, and that is the CutStudio plugin that you can see there. Let's move this one back a bit so we can actually see it. I might have to do it at speed. So here we go. So there's the job that we've just done. You can see there that the crop marks are in all four corners. So the first thing you want to do is just select your machine. So it gets on there the list of them, so you can use your old GXs and even CXs machines. And then there's a little button in there for crop marks. And once you press that button, it adds these 4 crop marks to the corner. You can also add 3 instead of 4 if you want to. It's just more accurate for using 4. At that point, what you want to do is just save your job as an EPS or a PDF file and then print it out on your machine on whatever you've got. So I just called mine stickers. Once you've done this point here, you would press basically the button at the top that looks like a little CutStudio icon. And what that does then is it will open up the CutStudio software that's included with your machine, and then you'll see in the corners that there are these registration marks. So it's the same principle where you print it out, move it over to your cutter, and then align it back up again. At this point here, you can see where I'm going up to the cutting box where I'm saying, right, I'm ready to go. You can see that I've got all of my cut lines in here. That is because CutStudio is picking up every single line as individuals. So you can see that's all within the design. But within my design on Illustrator, I gave the cut line on the outside. So all I'm doing there is I'm just selecting my color that I want to cut and not cut. So I want to cut the magenta line and not the black line. At that point there, you just click go, and it will find your marks again, and then you're ready to go again. It will do exactly the same thing, except it's not using VerseWorks to do them both. So that is pretty much it for VerseWorks and CutStudio in regards to print, laminate, and cut.
Perfect. So if any of you guys have got any questions, that's it for the process that we're showing. We'll just hold on here for 5 or 10 minutes just in case anybody's got any further questions. If you do pop them in the chat box, we'll ping them up onto the screen so everybody can see them, and we'll try and answer them.
Yeah. What's the next webinar on then, Joe?
The next webinar we're doing is based around the smaller GS cutter, which is a 24-inch cutter, and we're going to be looking at how you could start a business using just that device. So if you're looking to sort of dip your toe into the water and get involved in print/cutting of vinyl in the industry, then that's a perfect machine for doing that. And we're doing that in a couple of weeks. So looking at the smaller GS cutter and how you can start a business from that.
Yeah, smaller cutters. So if CutStudio is within the box of your cutter itself. If you want another copy of it, because there's no like dongle or license to go with it, it just goes with your machine. If you just contact us ourselves, we've got a tech support team who will just send it over to you. We've got no problem with it as long as you can give us a serial number of your cutter to prove you actually got one and you didn't just want the software. Then yeah, we'll send it on out to you. There's no problem. It's just a little exe file. Install it and it's good to go. We have a downloads website that always keeps up to date. Japan's pretty spot on with it. Same with the plugin itself. That's done through Adobe extensions. And also on our downloads website, you can have the plugin for Coral because they don't seem to have an online store for plugins yet. We shall see then.
Hopefully that answers your question. Another question here: will we be doing any further webinars? Yes, we will.
Then, Joe.
Yeah, we'll be. At the moment, we're doing these every 2 weeks, and we, depending on how they go, we might look to do them a little bit more often as well. At the moment, we've done maybe 8 or 9, I think, webinars now, and we're just got this little backlog at the moment that we're building a section on our website to host them all, so that you will be able to look back through the older webinars as well soon. We're just working on developing that at the moment. We don't have a schedule at the moment, but if you go to our website, so rolanddg.co.uk, and you go to the top to the Academy section, there is a webinar page, and that will just show the next 1 or 2 webinars that are coming up. And as I said, at the moment, they're sort of every 2 weeks, normally on a Thursday at around 3 o'clock. So keep an eye out on the website. Obviously, if you want to be in contact with us and you want to receive updates, you can always email us to allow email communication, and we'll ping out emails to you at any one point in which we have a new webinar coming up. But at the moment, yeah, we've done about 8, and hopefully we're going to be doing more and more based around products, applications, a bunch of stuff really. So in case anybody has any suggestions on what you would like to see in future webinars, feel free to get in touch with us and suggest them.
Is it posted on our Facebook site as well, Joe?
Yeah, we had a on the Roland DG UK Facebook page. We did a little video on there just asking people to suggest content, which is where the subject of this webinar came from. So yeah, feel free to get in touch with us via social media or via the website and tell us what you'd like to see.
Cool. Yeah. All right. Oh, cool. So we got another question here from Paul. So as a starting point, what pressure should I look at using on the SP540i with laminate? Okay, so this will depend though on the blade and like the blade holder you're using, because if so let's say then you're using a Roland blade with a Roland blade holder on it as well, and it's a brand new one like we were using on the GR, we were looking at about 270 grams of force is what we were on to go through laminate as well. If you're just going through a vinyl, you're only looking at about 100 for a new style blade anyway. Yeah, 270.
It really depends on the condition of the blade as well, so how old your blade is, and if and your laminate. So it depends on what film you're cutting. But you know, a normal, say, polymeric, medium grade to high grade vinyl with matching laminate. You just
depends on what your setup is, doesn't it?
Yeah, just the vinyl, you're probably looking between 50 and 100 grams force, and then you're probably looking at potentially double that because you're just doubling up the thickness of the vinyl. I'd say 270 is quite high, but it could mean that the blade's just a little bit worn. It could mean that it cooled down, so it wasn't as easy to cut. There's a few different variables within there.
You're looking at something like that as well if you're going to use like a motorcycle graphic. At the same time, you'd want to slow down the cut as well, just so that you get the fine detail. And because it's going through quite a lot, you use a bigger blade or sandblast blade.
Something that Dan almost mentioned throughout that webinar as well was perf cutting. So if you do perf cut on your print and cut device, not on a separate cutter, you will cut into your cutting strip, and over time that would get damaged, which would also affect the pressures of your blade. You might need to start upping the pressures quite a lot, and you may start to get patchy cuts. If that happens, you can get new cutting strips, which you just relay into the groove, which would give you a brand new, fresh cutting surface to cut into, and give you your cuts at full strength again.
That would be on your print and cut machine, but if you're going to have your cut only machine on the GR specifically, they have a separate channel, so that they've sort of eliminated that now of like preemptively braking.
Another question there, let's pop that up, 2 secs. Any preferred angle for the blade?
And it depends on the application, really. Using something that's fine or not. I mean, 45 right down smack bang in the middle, but you know, it depends.
The standard blades come in at 45 degrees. The sandblast blade, for example, I think is a 60-degree blade.
Yeah.
If I just jump over into the whiteboard here a minute, just give me 1 second, or I can hopefully draw here. If you've got hopefully you guys can see on the screen here, I'm drawing with my mouse, so forgive the wonky drawing. But if I have a 45-degree angle blade, for example, as you can see here, the cutting depth of my blade is this distance here. Okay, and so this is my blade, and this is the cutting distance. If I have a 60-degree blade, you effectively, so this is the angle, 45. I've now increased the angle to 60 here. Forgive the terrible drawing.
It's not bad, Joe.
And it means that the distance of my cutting edge has increased. So if you are going to be cutting deeper, thicker materials, then a larger angle can mean a sort of sharper point at the end, which can lead to a better result on thicker materials. And then a 30-degree, I can't say I've ever cut with one myself, but again, you know, you're going to have a shallower blade edge in effect. 45 degrees is the standard, and it's what most people use for most output. But again, if you're cutting things like reflective or sandblast materials, or Dan mentioned earlier, motocross graphics, things like that, really thick laminates, then you might want to use a higher degree angle to give you that extra sort of cutting depth. Hopefully that answered your question.
Yeah, cool. Yeah. Thanks, Paul. No worries.
Okay, well, if there's no more other questions, we'll finish up. Thanks for joining us today. And as I said, keep an eye out on the website where we will be hosting the webinars in future. And if you've got any feedback or anything, please do get in touch via the website. And thanks again for joining us. Enjoy the rest of your afternoon.
All right. Brilliant. Bye. Thanks, Paul. Thanks, everyone.